Hey guys, welcome back to another video of Frosty Explain. This is the series What If As Was Mew 2. So those who are new on this series, please check out it from the beginning, and if you want to watch this kind of series and related to videos more series, you should check out the playlist section, especially because I have uploaded many kind of things like this one on the channel. And if you are new on the channel, please subscribe it and turn on the bell icon for upcoming episodes. So today's going to be on the fourth episode of the series, and in the last episode we have came to the Viridian Pokemon Center, and some troubles are going to cause soon. So get your seatbelt ready for these today's awesome and some fantastic scenes. So without any more delay, let's begin today's episode.
My bike. Misty had waited till the rain had died down before she made her way to Viridian City. She was still mad at the fact that the guy took her bike, but she felt that the situation might have called for it. She planned on just taking the walk to the city, make sure that he made it to the Pokemon Center to heal the two Pokemon he had, take her bike and be on her way to another location to find some more water Pokemon. Unfortunately, her plans changed when she came across the sight of some unconscious Spearow. She was impressed at how many there were, and based on how some of them twitched with clear signs of paralyze, she assumed that the Pikachu he had did this. But when her eyes caught sight of her burnt destroyed bike, her mild anger became unbridled fury. She picked up the remains of her bike and began to run towards Viridian. That punk better be able to pay me back. Viridian. Ash was hobbling his way into Viridian as fast as he could. He knew that he was hurt badly due to taking a bunch of scratches and pecks to the back, but he was more concerned with the Pokemon. He shifted his arms a bit since he had the Pokemon in his arms and his pack dangling from his arm before he grew closer to the city. Officer Jenny was typing on the computer of the checkpoint stationed at the entrance of the city. She was filing in the reports about the recent sightings of members of the criminal organization, Team Rocket. She sighed as she had heard from her cousin over in Johto and Hone that they have their own criminal organizations that cause problems for them. If only everyone could live together in harmony, she couldn't help but smile at such an idea. It would be a perfect world to live together with Pokemon without people trying to control them. I can only dream. She was brought out of her musing when she saw a boy limping past her checkpoint with two Pokemon in his arms. Being how this was suspicious, she got up and grabbed the boy from the back of his jacket, but much to her surprise the collar of the jacket ripped off with a good portion of the back of the jacket with it. Ash was surprised by the sudden stop. He felt that he tripped forward, but he did his best to stay on his feet, which was difficult with all his injuries. He was fortunate enough to stay on his feet, but he heard something rip and he soon felt the cold night air on his back, which was odd because even though he still had his shirt on, it felt like his back was wet. He turned around to see an Officer Jenny holding what looked like part of his jacket. He let out a tired complaint, "My jacket." He took a deep breath as it was of little concern right now. Officer Jenny gave an apologetic smile at the action, but she needed to discern what was going on. "Sorry about the jacket, but I must ask why you have two Pokemon in your arms during the night." She went into her police role to make sure that these Pokemon weren't stolen. Ash looked at the officer and spoke, "This is my Pikachu and this is a wild Eevee. We ran into trouble in the forest of Route 1 and they were both hurt badly. I was taking them to the Pokemon Center so they could get healed up." Officer Jenny looked at the Pokemon and could tell that the two Pokemon were hurt just as the boy said. However, she still needs to make sure that they weren't stolen since this could still be an excuse. "Okay, young man. Can you offer some identification?" Ash thought about the question before he remembered what the professor told him about the Pokédex just before he left Pallet. He looked down and could see it in his inner left breast pocket. The problem was that his arms were full and could not reach it. He thought about what to do and made a choice that he didn't like. He gently shook his left arm that held Pikachu and whispered gently, "Hey, Pikachu." Pikachu slowly opened her eyes as she looked up tiredly at Ash. She was exhausted and hurt, but she responded regardless, "Yes. I'm sorry for waking you, but can you get my Pokédex in my pocket next to you?" Pikachu turned her head to her right and could feel something inside the jacket. She slowly shifted up, making sure that she kept hold of the feather that were still in her paws, and slowly reached in the jacket and slowly pulled out the red device. Once it was in her paws, she fell back into Ash's arms. Now on her back again, she snuggled into his chest as she felt a bit more comfortable, closed her eyes, and fell back asleep, making sure the feather was secure in her paws. Officer Jenny felt bad for the Pokemon as she could see the Pikachu lay comfortably in his arms. She also couldn't help but think, that's a beautiful feather. She reached to the device and began to press some buttons until it gave off what she needed to hear. Hello, I am Dexter. I am the registered Pokemon Encyclopedia for one Ash Ketchum. By authorization of Professor Samuel Oak, Ash Ketchum is allowed to travel on become a Pokemon trainer. If lost, please return to the professor located in Pallet Town. Officer Jenny nodded in satisfaction as this told her that he was meant to be out and with Pokemon. She would have handed it over, but she saw that he wouldn't be able to hold onto it. Seeing the backpack dangling, she gestured for her to put it in there. Seeing him nod, she unzipped the front pocket and put it in there. Once that was done, she looked over the boy and saw that he wasn't doing too well either. She thought about what she could do to help the three until she smiled brightly and ran back to the checkpoint. She hopped on her motorcycle before she rode it to be next to the boy. Hop in, it will be faster this way. Ash wasn't sure about this, since he never really rode in a motorcycle, but it wasn't just a faster way to get to the Pokemon Center, but it was a direct way to it. He realized that he didn't really know where it was, so why not? He got into the sidecar and made sure his passengers were safely in his lap. Now that he was sitting down, he felt his energy being drained from him and he felt himself losing consciousness. His eyes shot open when he suddenly felt himself pushed back in his seat. The sudden burst of movement wasn't the only thing that woke him up, the wounds on his back stung and that helped in waking him up. As the small group drove off to the Pokemon Center, they did not catch the sight of an angry redhead. Hey wait, she coughed at the ease that came from the motorcycle before she looked at the direction they went. Grr, get back here and pay for my bike. She was about to run after them until she stepped in something. She looked down and shifted her foot so she could see what it was. Her eyes went wide when she realized that she stepped in a small splatter of blood. She looked back at the direction before looking back down. One of them is bleeding. She looked back at the splatter and for a second she thought that there was something odd about it, like it had slightly different coloration to the normal red, but she just chalked it up to the lack of light. She shook her head and began running after them. As she ran after them, a hook dropped down and grabbed a wanted poster that had the image of a crimson-haired woman and a blue-haired man. A male voice spoke, "Wanted. How dare they say such things about us? And this picture does not show my good side." A female voice answered, "They should be happy to see us. And you don't have a good side." The male pulled out a rose, "So true." A third voice with a bit of a nasally accent, "Is that accurate? Meow, they should be glad we catch all dear Pokemon." The female voice spoke next, "Well, we don't want to keep them waiting." The blimp the three were in began to slowly make its way to the Pokemon Center. Ash felt the wind blow past his face and he looked down to see that the two were still unconscious. He was happy that this ride didn't disturb them, but he was sure that it would take some time until he got used to it. His eyes widened when he saw the Pokemon Center coming up fast and she wasn't slowing down. "Maybe you should stop." Officer Jenny smirked as she saw the center. "I got it this time." Ash felt even more panicked. "Got what this time?" "Ah." The nurse Joy of the Viridian Pokemon Center was going over the patient files that she had during the day. During times that they weren't dealing with patients, the nurses go over the patient files to make sure that everything is in order. They also went over the inventory of medical supplies to make sure that they are always stocked. She looked up when she heard the revving of an engine and a scream and was surprised to see Officer Jenny skid to a stop right in front of the front desk on her motorcycle. She angrily looked to Officer Jenny as she spoke in a reprimanding tone, "We have a driveway, you know." Jenny looked to the nurse as if she didn't do anything wrong. "We have a Pokemon emergency." Ash got out of the sidecar and walked up to the nurse. Please, can you help them? Nurse Joy looked at the Pokemon in his arms before she nodded. Looks like a Pikachu and Eevee. She looked behind her and called out, Chansey. Audino. 2 stretchers for small Pokemon. Out from the back came 2 Chansey and 2 Audino, each pair with a stretcher. Before the Chansey pair took Pikachu and the Audino pair took the Eevee. Ash watched them go with a worried expression. Are they going to be okay? Officer Jenny put a hand on his shoulder with a reassuring smile. They're going to be fine. They are in good hands. Ash nodded as he knew how good Nurse Joys were with their job. He had seen it before. Thanks for getting us here. Officer Jenny smiled. No problem. She turned her head to the front desk and suddenly noticed something. Oh my gosh. How did my motorcycle get in here? Nurse Joy smiled at her friend's antics. Next time use the driveway. Officer Jenny nervously chuckled as she walked her bike out of the center. Ash felt relief at the fact that Pikachu and Eevee were going to be alright now. Nurse Joy then gained an angry look and was about to say something to the boy but stopped when she noticed his state of dress. She at first assumed that he had trained them too far, but based on his appearance, he had also gone through a lot, so it made it seem that it wasn't overtraining as she has seen many beginning trainers do. What happened? Ash looked to Nurse Joy and he explained how Eevee was being attacked by a few Spearow, him saving it being chased, and the Thunderstrike. Nurse Joy's frown soon disappeared after she had heard what he had done for a Pokemon that he had said wasn't even his. You did a brave thing protecting those 2. Ash sighed sadly as he didn't feel like he did enough for the praise. I just hope they are okay. Nurse Joy smiled at the concern he had. Don't worry, we will do all we can. Ash nodded, thanks. He watched as the woman left to go help the 2 before he moved to go sit in the waiting room. He stopped when he heard a phone begin to ring. He looked around and saw that it was coming from the front desk computer. He went over and answered it. Hello. Oh Ash. I didn't expect you to answer the call. Who is calling? Over here Ash. Ash turned around to a mural that lifted up to show a screen that lit up and showed the back of someone's head. Hello there Ash, don't you recognize me? Ash recognized who it was immediately but felt like having some fun. No professor, I couldn't recognize you by the back of your head. He smiled as he saw the professor begin to fiddle with the computer. He then saw that the angle of the camera now showed the professor's face. Hi Professor. Good to hear from you, Ash, though I am surprised that you arrived in Viridian City so quickly. Ash sweet-dropped at what caused him to reach the city so quickly. Well, something motivated me to get a move on. Must have been some motivation. The previous trainers made it to Viridian with no problem, granted most of them arrived hours ago using their bikes. Well, Gary used the car but they all made it quickly. I'll admit that I had my doubt and worries that you could handle your Pikachu. Ash felt bad about that as he had some hope that the professor would have at least a little faith in him. But when my grandson Gary said that you would make it there without getting a single new Pokemon, I bet him $1 million that he'd be wrong. Ash sweet-dropped at how they were placing a bet on him on whether or not he would catch a Pokemon. He thought about this and a small part of him felt mad at how Gary seemed to belittle him every chance he got, and it influenced his next answer. Well, I did get an Eevee, it wasn't a lie, he did get an Eevee, he just didn't catch it, and he wasn't even sure if he should. Professor Oak's smile grew as he pumped his fist in the air. Yes. I'll be sure to inform Gary about this. He then paused as his mind registered what the boy had just said. Wait, an Eevee. All the way out here. That is interesting. Although, I have been hearing that Pokemon from other regions have been popping up around Kanto, so it could be possible that this Eevee was forced out of its home, or it might have just been wandering. Though the sighting of these Pokemon are rather scarce, so it's only speculation. Maybe Professor. Ash smiled at how the professor could go off into theories when it came to Pokemon, but he felt something slide off his shoulder and looked to see that it was his jacket. He pulled it off to see that most of the back was gone, most likely when Officer Jenny tried to stop him. Professor Oak noticed the movement and finally got a good look at the boy. He did notice the jacket, but he also saw that his pants had some cuts in them and there were some scratches on the boy's face. Ash, what happened? Ash looked back up to the screen and smiled sheepishly. Well, did something happen to Ash? He knew that voice and he watched as the professor was shoved to the side to show the concerned face of his mother. Hi, Mom. Delia pressed her face to the screen and looked over her son. Ash. What happened to you? Ash knew he couldn't lie to her. He tried many times before, but she always saw right through him, so he opted with telling her the truth. Once he finished telling her, he could see the look of worry on her face. But I'm alright, Mom. You don't have to worry about me so much. Delia made a face. I'll always worry about you, but I am happy that you are okay. Speaking of which, where is she? Ash was confused at this as he tilted his head. Who? Pikachu. Delia also gained a look of confusion until she realized something. You haven't met up yet. Though you did arrive at the center at a late hour and she wasn't expecting you so soon. No, but I am here. Ash looked behind him when he heard the voice and he saw that it was Nurse Joy, but not the Nurse Joy of Viridian City. Despite still wearing the usual nurse outfit, this was a much younger Nurse Joy. Joy. Wah. The young nurse walked up to Ash and smiled at the boy. It's nice to see you again, Ash. I was asked by our moms to go with you on your journey. This young Joy was the daughter of the family friend Nurse Joy. The two had met early on when they were younger and they have been friends ever since. She is only 2 years older than Ash, but she has trained and studied to be almost as good as any other Nurse Joy. Ash turned in shock at his mother. Mom. Delia gained a stern look as she spoke to her son. Ash, you will not change my mind on this. She will be going with you to make sure that you are okay. With her with you, I can relax a bit more. Ash slumped as he knew that he would not be able to win against his mother. Okay. Delia smiled at his answer before she looked at the young Joy. Make sure that he remains healthy. Joy smiled as she folded her hands in front of her as she bowed. I promise, Delia. Delia smiled wider, and make sure that he changes his underwear every day. Ash face faulted at this. Mom. Joy smiled. Will do, Delia. Delia then turned her gaze to Ash. Ash, be careful out there. Ash smiled up at his Mima. I will, Mom. Take care, you too. With that the screen turned off. Ash sighed as his journey just started and already so much has happened. He turned to Joy and smiled. Well, at least I won't be going on this journey alone. Joy smiled at him and was about to say something, but there you are. She was interrupted by someone shouting out. Both she and Ash turned to the entrance to see a redhead carrying a burnt black bike. Ash recognized her immediately as the girl he borrowed the bike from. Speaking of which, he looked at the bike and had to wonder, what happened to your bike? Misty glared at the boy. You happened, you little punk. I found it on the road next to a bunch of paralyzed Spearow. Ash thought about what could have happened and came to an idea. He crossed his arms as he spoke. Maybe Pikachu's Thunderbolt caused it. Joy looked at him in confusion before she smiled. You caught a Pikachu. I'm impressed, Ash. Ash felt his mood drop. No, she was my starter and because of a Spearow attack, she ended up hurt. He looked to the door that he saw the medical Pokemon take both Pikachu and Eevee. Joy's smile dropped as she saw how sad he was that his Pokemon got hurt. Misty's angry look softened as she saw the depression he had. Are they okay? Ash sighed as he wasn't sure. I think so. As he finished saying this, the light that told them that the medical wing was in use turned off, and out came the Nurse Joy of the center along with the Audino and Chansey, pushing a single stretcher that had both Eevee and Pikachu. Both awake and looking better. Ash ran over to them. Pikachu. Eevee. Are you two alright? Nurse Joy smiled at the boy. They are both doing fine though. Your Eevee seems to be quite fearful. Eevee hid behind Pikachu as the human got closer. Pikachu looked back and smiled at Eevee. Don't worry. He is the one that saved you from the Spearow. Eevee slowly got out from behind Pikachu and looked up at the human. The human smelled odd. He smelled like a Pokemon. Not only that, the human's smile removed any tension Eevee had. Eevee was about to give its thanks, but suddenly something fell through the ceiling window, causing Eevee to hide again behind Pikachu. The items that fell from the ceiling were 2 Pokeballs that opened up to reveal a Coughing and an Ekans. Ekans hissed out, ready. Coughing smiled, let's go. He then unleashed smog into the air, causing it hard to see. Ash coughed a bit as he tried to look through the smog. What's going on? A female voice spoke up from within the smog. Don't worry, little boy. There is nothing to fear. Prepare for trouble, and make it double, to protect the world from devastation. To unite all peoples within our nation. To denounce the evils of truth and love. To extend our reach to the stars above. Jesse. James. Team Rocket blasts off at the speed of light. Surrender now, or prepare to fight. Meowth. That's right. This will be the only time I put that. Next time it will just be, insert motto here. The 3 kids, Pokemon, and adult were a bit confused about the motto as it was a bit confusing. Ash, on the other hand, felt something inside him be afraid of the anime they gave. Team Rocket, he knows for a fact that he never heard of them before, but something about it was telling him that he shouldn't deal with them. But as he thought about the motto, his subconscious fear gave way to confusion and he vocalized it. What are you talking about? Jesse smiled condescendingly at them. Looks like the kid doesn't get it. How can I? You guys aren't making any sense. James took out a rose as he answered, we're here to take all your Pokemon. Ash grit his teeth as he stood in front of Pikachu and Eevee. You're not getting Pikachu or Eevee. James scoffed at this Pikachu. We don't want such a useless Pokemon. Although that Eevee could be very useful to the boss. Ash glared at them, forget it. Jessie smiled. Aw, the little kid thinks he's tough. Let's show him what we are made of. She threw her arm forward as she commanded, Ekans. James followed suit, coughing. Attack. The group were surprised that the Pokemon went to attack them as they jumped out of the way. Ash grabbed Eevee and Pikachu before he jumped out of the way of the 2 poison types as the computer behind the boy was destroyed by said Pokemon. He rolled on the ground with the 2 small Pokemon still in his arms. Once he stopped, he turned to see that the poison types were making their way towards him. Joy, Misty, and Nurse Joy were on the other side of the center as they turned to see Ash being cornered. Joy grew worried as she called out, Ash. She pulled out a Pokeball and was about to summon her Pokemon, but she saw something that made her pause. Pikachu jumped out of Ash's arm and growled at the 2, stay away from him. Meowth laughed as he moved to stand in between Ekans and coughing, ha. And what ya plan ta do ta us lil missy? Eevee trembled a bit in fear but paused when the human held it closer. It looked up at the human who was smiling back. Ash looked down at the Eevee reassuringly, don't worry. Pikachu can handle them. Ash was just as worried about this, but he wanted to make sure that Eevee wasn't afraid of what was going on. Eevee didn't know why, but this human felt comforting. And it chose to just wait and see what happens. Pikachu's cheeks sparked as she hated being looked down on. Let me show you. She sent out an electric shock that shocked the team a bit. Meowth, Ekans, and Coughing shook their heads to remove the soot they were covered in as the poison types moved forward to Pikachu. James and Jessie glared at the mouse as Jessie angrily said, that little rat ruined my hair. Ekans, have your dinner. Ekans charged at Pikachu, ready to eat said mouse Pokemon. Ash panicked as he grew fearful of losing his first Pokemon friend so soon in their journey. Pikachu. Something in Pikachu surged and she felt like she had to try one more time. She saw the snake coming closer and made her move. Pika. She sent out another electric shock that seemed more powerful than a Pokemon like her should have and shocked Team Rocket once more, but this time all of them were screaming in pain. Ah, oh, meah, cans. Ah, oh, meah, cans. Ah, oh, meah, cans. Coughing was spewing out its smog and was soon hit with the electricity, causing a massive explosion that sent the criminals flying out of the center. Officer Jenny rode by and skidded to a stop as she saw the explosion. Wow. Nice fireworks. Pikachu stopped her attack as she felt tired from unleashing so much power. She looked back to Ash to see if he and Eevee were okay and was happy to see that the 2 were fine. She ran up to Ash, who was sitting on the ground, and smiled at her trainer. How was that? Ash smiled as he brought his free hand up and began petting her on her head. That was amazing, Pikachu. Pikachu enjoyed the attention she was getting until she heard others walking closer. Joy, Misty, and Nurse Joy walked up to them and all felt relieved that they were alright. Joy knelt down and looked Ash over. She grew concerned when she saw that the back of his shirt was soaked. But from what she could tell, they were from what had just happened. Ash, you're hurt. Ash looked to Joy, and now that the adrenaline from what happened was dying down, he felt his energy being drained and his eyelids were drooping. I don't feel. He was about to fall unconscious, but he felt a hand shake him on the shoulder. Joy saw that he was about to lose consciousness, so she shook him awake. Ash, you can't fall asleep here and you are hurt. Let me look you over in one of the rooms. She turned to her cousin, silently asking if that was alright. Nurse Joy nodded as she spoke. Of course. You can use the room you rented for yourself. Joy nodded and gently pulled Ash to his feet. She was about to take Eevee from his arms, but the fox Pokemon shifted closer into him. She sighed as she did not have time for this, so she let the fox Pokemon stay there for now. Come on, Ash. Ash nodded as he let Joy pull him away, with Pikachu following behind. Misty watched them leave and sighed as because of all this, she couldn't bring up her bike that was unfortunately hit again by the thunderbolt and was now just a pile of junk with no way of being fixed. She turned to Nurse Joy. Can I get a room for the night? Nurse Joy nodded as she led the red-haired girl to set up a room. Joy brought Ash into her room and flipped the light switch only to see that they didn't work. The explosion must have caused some damage to the electrical system. She decided to just move in the dark since the moon was giving enough light to see, and sat Ash on the bed. She then brought out a Pokeball and released its Pokemon, a Chansey. Chansey came out with a smile before it dropped at the sight of Ash. Her medical training helped her see that he was in bad shape. Ash opened his closing eyes as he gave a droopy smile. Hey Chansey. Joy would have let them talk, but she needed to do her job. Chansey, please use Sing. Chansey didn't need to be told twice as she had done this numerous times. She began to sing, making sure to focus it on Ash and Ash alone. Ash felt even more tired as he heard the sweet melody. Eevee saw that the human, Ash, was about to fall over asleep and jumped out of his arms and moved over to stand by Pikachu. Joy knew she only had seconds and moved quickly. Once Ash was close to falling asleep, she quickly moved to remove his pants and shoes. This part always made her blush heavily, but she needed to do this. So she did her best to enter a medical mindset and got to work. She was fortunate enough to remove his shoes and lower the pants and boxers to his ankles just before it happened. Pikachu and Eevee covered their eyes as Ash was enveloped by light. They opened their eyes when it died down and saw that now, instead of the human they had been with all this time, was a Pokemon that neither of them knew. Joy held onto his shoulders before she used her free hand to remove the pants that were at his ankles. She looked to Chansey, who came up with a pair of scissors before taking the said item and cut up the shirt in order to remove it. Once that was done, she handed the scissors back to Chansey and gently lowered Ash to lay on his stomach, making sure his tail was moved to the side of him on the bed instead of falling to the ground. She looked at his back and saw all the scratches and cuts as well as the gash that was on his arm. She immediately got to work in healing Ash using medical supplies she had set aside in the room. Pikachu was stunned at what she was seeing. Ash is a Pokemon. She thought about what his mother had told her when she first met Ash Special. Was this what she meant? She looked to Eevee and saw that it was just as confused about what was going on. She then looked to Chansey and saw that she wasn't surprised at all. Do you know? Chansey nodded. She was told the whole thing by the Audino her trainer's mother had. She knew that her trainer was told about this, but a more shortened and abridged version of it, but Audino told her the whole truth that Mew had told. She looked to the two smaller Pokemon and began to explain what she knew. About Ash being a clone of Mew called Mewtwo. How Ash was stillborn, how the spirit of Mewtwo was fading during that time and Mew using Ash's spirit to take its place, and how Ash did not even know about it. Pikachu and Eevee were stunned to hear this. A clone of Mew, it was impossible to believe, but the proof was right there. Joy continued to apply Hyper Potion to Ash's back and did her best to make sure no scars remained. She saw him whine and let out some Pokemon cries, but she was used to it. After some time, she finished up and sat down on the floor. Oh, Ash. I get the feeling that this journey is going to be more complicated than we thought. She thought back to Team Rocket and their attack. From what she could tell, they weren't here for Ash, they were here for Pokemon in general. But she did see a few things that caused her to worry. Ash had taken a step back when he heard the name. Although she was told the story that a group of people made him, she nor their mothers knew who it was really. Could Team Rocket be the ones that made him? She would have latched onto this idea, but she didn't have any real proof of it. Another thing she noticed was that just before Pikachu unleashed that extremely powerful thunderbolt, Ash's eyes lit up. It was so subtle that it could have been a trick of the light from the sparks, but based on what Ash was, she couldn't throw out such a possibility. The truth was that they didn't know anything about Ash's abilities. On occasion, he would show some sort of power, but it was so small that they weren't anything to note on. She sighed as she looked back at Chansey, Pikachu, and Eevee. She looked at Chansey and asked, "I suppose you told them?" Chansey nodded in confirmation. Joy sighed as she looked to the two smaller Pokemon. "Please, you must keep this a secret from everyone. Especially him. We have been trying to keep him safe, and this journey puts him at great risk, but he wanted to go so badly that we let him." She looked at Ash's sleeping face as she was glad that he was no longer wincing in pain. "Please keep this secret." She turned to them and watched as Pikachu moved over to the bed before leaping up on the bed. Pikachu looked at Ash's new form and was intrigued by his form. It was something she had never seen before except for a few other Pokemon. She looked back at Joy and nodded before she moved to Ash's side and laid down next to him to get some sleep. She looked to Eevee and asked, "You coming?" Eevee slowly made its way to the bed as she was still nervous about being around the group. But it remembered the comforting aura that Ash had and felt like it was okay to be around him. It hopped up on the bed and laid down on Ash's side next to Pikachu. Joy smiled at the scene and moved to a chair before sitting down and closed her eyes. It was late and she needed some sleep. Chansey moved to a closet that was in the room before taking out a blanket and placing it over Joy. Once she was sure the blanket wouldn't fall off, she picked up her Pokeball, placed it on the counter, and pressed the button to return herself into the ball. Next day, Ash, Pikachu, Joy, and Misty were leaving the city, glad that they weren't hit with the bill for repairs of the center. Joy changed out of her nurse outfit and was now wearing a pink short-sleeved shirt that had a white collar and with a Pokeball image over her left breast, and white shorts that were held up with a brown belt that had a couple of Pokeballs on it. On her back was a baby blue traveling pack that held her nurse uniform as well as many different supplies that would be needed for the journey. She also had a white cap on her head, and around her neck was a necklace that was tucked under her shirt. Ash was in a new set of clothes, but he was without a jacket as he only brought one. He figured that he would get a new one in the next city since the shop here didn't have one like his previous jacket. Ash looked to Misty with a confused look. "So why are you following us?" Misty glared at him as she almost shouted, "I'm going to follow you until you pay me back for my bike." Ash brought his hands up in surrender as he didn't know exactly how to deal with this. Joy smiled as she watched the two. She was glad that Ash was able to make a friend, albeit an interesting one as well. It was then that she noticed movement behind them. She smiled as she saw who it was. Excuse me." Ash and Misty stopped what they were doing when they heard this, with Ash understanding the words while Misty just heard it call its name. They turned their heads and saw that it was the Eevee that Ash had let go off on its own in the morning. Ash walked up to the Eevee and knelt down. "What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be heading home?" Eevee shuffled its feet a bit as it looked down in sadness. "I don't have a home to go back to. I was trying to find a place that I can call home, but I was attacked by the Spearow when I found a place that I might be able to call home. Pikachu told me that you saved me from the Spearow and brought me here to be healed." Evie smiled up at him now as it gained a bit more courage. I would like to go with you on your journey, if you'll have me, it said as its courage died down as it spoke. Ash gained such a big smile as he picked Evie up, which got a squeak of surprise, and he hugged the Evie. I'd be happy if you come with us. Misty and Joy smiled at the happy scene the boy was having until Misty gained a confused look. How did you know that it wanted to come with us? Ash paused his hug as he turned to her and began to sweat nervously. I guessed. Misty sighed at this as it was a silly answer, but she accepted it. Ash sighed in relief as he saw that Misty would drop it. He looked down and smiled as he pulled out a Pokeball. Welcome to the team, Evie. Evie pressed the button of the ball before enveloped in red light and sucked into the Pokeball. The ball shimmied once before a ping was heard. Ash smiled as he thrusted the ball in front of him and posed. Alright. I caught an Evie. Pikachu jumped up in front of him and winked. Welcome to the team, Evie. Joy giggled at this as she asked, what's with the pose? Ash smiled sheepishly as he answered, I thought it'd be fun. Was fun for me. Pikachu smiled as she got on his shoulder. Joy and Misty looked at each other and couldn't really see anything wrong with it. Joy then gestured for them to continue their trek into the Viridian forest. Before Ash could take a step, Evie burst out of the Pokeball before shaking. It feels weird being in there. Pikachu nodded as she spoke. It's why I never go in mine. It's just cramped. Ash bent down and brought his arm in front of Evie, who ran up his arm and sat on his other shoulder. He got back up and the group moved forward ready to enter the forest. He looked to Evie and smiled before speaking. She is going to be a good part of this team.
Hey guys, if you like this video, please do one thing, like it, share it with your those friends who love to watch Pokemon or any fanfic of anime which are related to specific genres. So please do that and turn on the bell icon for notification of these any other series which are still ongoing on channel. Thanks for watching.